Never argue with a fool. Onlookers may not be able to tell the difference. Mark Twain. Now, you may be asking yourself, why am I opening up a video with a random Mark Twain quote? Well, that's because recently, Moist Critical, or Charlie, and Sneeko decided to have a massive debate. And if you don't know who either of those people are, if you don't know who Moist Critical is, and you're watching this video on YouTube, I would be more than interested to find out how you do not know who he is, because he is one of the bigger creators on the platform, pulls in over 1 million views for each video, and he's all over the place. And then Sneeko, well, Sneeko is a popular internet moron. But these two have decided to hold a debate recently, and you may be wondering what led up to this. Well, no more than just a year ago, these two were flashing guns at each other on their respective streams, because that seems like perfectly well-adjusted things for both of them to do, but you know, it's the world we live in. But the reason I bring this up is, as said in the intro, Sneeko is a well-known internet moron, and well, you would think that Moist Critical going on here to debate him, to talk about multiple different topics that are in the mainstream currently, that he would be able to just stomp on this guy and just walk out looking like the victor, right? Well, quite the contrary. If anything, he came out looking worse than he has in probably his entire online career. You know, Sneeko is quite the enigma to me. So in this debate, they bring up, of all things, the age of consent, because it's 2024 and for some reason we're arguing about the age of consent. Well, of course, Charlie brings up the fact of, well, if you know this 16-year-old girl, would you be willing to go and start a relationship with this 16-year-old girl if you have romantic interests with them?
Okay, so then instead of let's take it away from like premarital sex, would you feel comfortable marrying a 16-year-old? Like, would you meet a 16-year-old with romantic intent if you're in Europe, and maybe marry a 16-year-old? Nothing sexual.
I probably wouldn't personally, because I don't think that I'd be on the same mental playing field. I like to have intellectual conversations. I like to be with women that are around my same age.
And Sneeko's like, oh no, I don't like 16-year-olds, because liking a 16-year-old isn't good. I like to be on people on the same wavelength as me. But the more that he talks about the age of consent and everything, he goes about it incredibly weird. So his stance on it is pretty much, oh, I would never go out with a 16-year-old girl or somebody who's under the age of consent. But you know, if somebody else wants to, I don't see why I should stop them.
We're talking globally. Let's just talk globally. Like, do you think it is okay for, I'm not talking about just you specifically anymore, anyone. Do you think it's okay for anyone in their 20s, an adult, to marry a 15 or 16-year-old?
A 21-year-old, if there was a marriage where the father consented and the daughter consented, and it was both good on both families and they wanted to do it, why am I going to get involved? Why should we get the government involved?
It's almost one of his exact quotes. He goes, if a 21-year-old guy and a 16-year-old girl and all the family members are okay with it, why should I get involved? Why should I stop that? Which is insane to me. This basically reads as like a To Catch a Predator video with Chris Hansen, only the Sneeko version is he has them meet up, and instead of coming in and telling him to take a seat and asking why they're there to meet a 16-year-old, he brings out a plate of cheese and crackers and he offers to put on any type of movie they want while he watches the whole thing happen. You know, the Sneeko chair thing is kind of making a lot more sense now. And to help prove his point, Sneeko brings up a whole bunch of brain-dead, absolute moronic takes where he begins to question the government set age of consent. So as most people know, 18 is basically the line in the sand. That's when you're not really allowed to be in a relationship with someone under that, because a lot of times they're not mentally mature enough, and it takes a little bit more time for people like that to develop. Well, his point is the age of consent should more so be the age of maturity.
You do admit that varies for most people, right? A lot of people don't move out of their parents' homes until they're 25, 26, 27. A lot of people don't.
There's nothing wrong with that.
A lot of people graduate high school 16. A lot of people graduate high school 20. It's a huge variable. Yes.
And I don't think
I want to define. But what you're saying, your definition of adult is not even the actual definition. Do you know what the definition of child is? Like, anybody watching this can Google it. You can Google it too. The definition of child is somebody who has not reached puberty yet. That's the definition.
Yeah, and then you get into like the abibophile or whatever, as opposed to file, and those are all.
I don't know. I have no idea what those terms are. I don't know what that is, but I'm saying that's the actual definition. When somebody reaches maturity, it's based off of biological and physical maturity.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
So
right
so
now,
so it varies for everybody. Adulthood is not something that you can set in stone because it's different for the entire world. Right? I moved out when I was 14. A lot of people don't move out until they're 25. I went through puberty when I was 17. A lot of people went through puberty when they were 13, 14, 15. It changes for everybody. So for you to say that this is the set in stone age and say you're a pedophile if it's under 18, and then if you're over 18, you're fine. Well, then that's a weird line that doesn't make sense. So you're going to say this person is a terrible person if they're 17 years old, 364 days, and right after that, they're good to go. Well, it changes for everybody. So we have to have something, a definition. We have to be realistic with everybody. Well, we don't. But you're saying we, but that's not even the case in the country we live in.
Which is ridiculous because there's no way to actually define the age of maturity. What are you going to do? Are you going to find a 13-year-old and you're going to ask them how they fill out their taxes or what they would do if they were to set up a 401k today? That's absolutely absurd. There's no age of maturity. Yes, people may move out when they're 17. Yes, people may start to think about big life plans by the age of 15 or 16, but that does not mean that they can make life-altering decisions at such a young age. There's no such thing as an age of maturity. 18 years old is a fine set in line standard. And he brings up this point where it's like, oh, so if this person is 17 years old, 364 days old, and they get in a relationship with someone who's 25, does that mean that the 25-year-old is a predator? Well, the bigger issue there would be the age gap in the two individuals. It's not necessarily the fact that the 17-year-old turns 18 in a day and that's what makes them a predator is that one day. It's more so the age disparity. And that's the main issue that comes with the quote-unquote age of consent. So for my personal story, when I started dating my girlfriend, I was 18. My girlfriend was 16. We were both in the same high school. I was a junior, she was a freshman. She turned 17 a couple months later. But even though I was 18 and I was above the age of 18 and she wasn't, that doesn't make me a predator because we are still so close in age that we're two very similar aged individuals. Now, when you start talking about someone who's in their mid-20s talking to someone who's 17, that's where the issue comes into effect. That age disparity is the big issue of the entire conversation. It's not the fact that that one person is a day younger than 18, it's the fact that the other person has about 8 more years of life experience above them and is making decisions for this under 18-year-old. So when you bring up these stupid semantic arguments of, well, this person's 17 years old and 364 days and the other person's 25. The 17 years and 364 days is not the problem. It's the fact that the other person is about 8 years older than them. And they have this very clear dynamic that shouldn't work. You should not be dating someone who's that young when you are in your mid-20s. The 17, 364 does not matter. What matters is the fact that the other person is a solid 8 years older than this person. And at this point, Sneeko starts going off into left field and absolutely loses it. And he decides that his mind is going to go straight sicko mode and he's going to start ripping out any type of controversial thing that he can think of here. Because for some reason, he starts bringing out, I'm not going to even touch the first one, but basically relations with animals is basically the one that he brings up. He goes, let's say the government legalizes that. Then what would stop you from doing that?
Tomorrow, if the U.S. government legalized bestiality, if the government legalized incest, based off your logic, there'd be no reason why that's wrong. Can I ask you, Moise, do you think that incest is wrong?
What the hell?
Maybe it's the fact that you shouldn't do that to animals. You know, the whole reason that people don't, I don't know, this might come as a shocker, try to have relations with kids is because there's an inherent innocence with kids that is very easy to be taken advantage of, and your morality should stop you from wanting to do that. If the only thing stopping you is the government saying not to do it, then there's a lot bigger issues there. Because, you know, the government does make laws, but laws are usually based off of some sort of morality. They don't just make a bunch of laws for the fun of it. Like, I know there are probably some laws out there that don't make any sense about like jaywalking in Ohio or something like that, but most laws are based off of common decency and morality. So if the only thing that's stopping Sneeko from going on a dinner date with Fido and expecting some fun afterwards, he might need to take a look in the mirror and look at himself. I know he's not actively trying to campaign or partition for this to be legalized. That's not what he's doing. He's trying to make a whataboutism. But if that's part of your whataboutism, you're kind of losing the plot already. And at the same point in the debate, Sneeko brings up the whole point of incest, which, again, you're pulling out the most random things to start talking about just to try to prove your point. And this is where Charlie kind of begins to lose himself in the whole thing. Eminem just straight to lose himself here, because obviously he gives everyone's correct answer of, well, is incest bad? Yes, it's bad.
Yes.
Why is incest wrong?
There is under no circumstances any excuse for anyone of the same bloodline to be romantic like that. By no means at all.
And Sneeko, being the brain dead bolt that he is, goes, well, why is it bad? And you should very easily be able to say, well, the reason that it's bad is because the inherent position of a parent to a child is a kind of relationship that should never be formed into a more intimate relationship. No point in time should that ever be allowed. Even if they don't actively raise that child, the fact that you have the responsibility to raise this child, give them a proper upbringing, and provide for them, that's a power dynamic that should never be taken advantage of. Because as soon as you start doing that, then again, it comes back to morality. You should not be caring for someone, feeding someone, raising someone, trying to teach them how to be a decent human being, and at the same time be thinking these inappropriate thoughts. That is a line that should never be crossed whatsoever. And the fact that he's bringing this up to make a gotcha moment is incredibly ridiculous. And the whole point of Sneeko bringing up this moronic thought process is the fact that, well, if you take your morality from the day and age that is around you, what happens if you were back in the 1700s where you could marry a 13 or a 14-year-old?
But why is it horrible? Because who told you that?
It's what I believe. And also, if you do have a child with your own kin, the child suffers.
Okay, but say it's two gay brothers, Chris Tyson and other Chris Tyson and Chris. If they're two brothers and they decide to be in a no, genuine question. It's what you believe in. I want to figure out where your beliefs come from. You personally believe that?
My beliefs come from a place of what I believe to be moral, where I don't believe that anyone in the same family has any position to be romantic with one another. I don't think that's a
your morality
dynamic.
Comes from yourself?
My morality comes from like the world around me. I don't have.
Okay, so if the morality comes from the world around you, then by your logic, if you lived in America in the 1800s where the age of 10 was okay and where the age of 7 was okay in England just 200 years ago, if you followed the world around you, that would be okay.
Then would it be legal then? Because you would be taking the morality of that time frame around you, which I don't know if y'all remember me saying at the beginning of this video, but we are living in the year 2024. And I also remember back in like the 1700s and all those times that we would just drown people because we thought they were witches. We would also use leeches to cure the devil out of people. So you can grow as a society, you can grow as a species and develop morals that a couple of years ago, 200 years ago, were not the same morals because, shocker, people grow, which Sneeko might not want because he wants everyone to stay 16 for some reason, but people learn as a society. You do not just inherently spawn in one day with one set of beliefs and that's it. You learn, you grow, you develop life experiences, and you learn. That is why we no longer use leeches to suck the demons out of people. But all this leads up to the moment you've all been waiting for, the moist critical L. And the moist critical L being that I don't know if he personally believes it, but the stance that he took was that children should be allowed to medically transition.
Do you believe that somebody can go through hormone therapy? Can they change their gender if they're a child?
I think that's totally fine as long as everyone is consenting, as you agree with.
Which I don't care what your thoughts are on LGBTQ community or anything like that. Children should not be allowed to medically transition at a young age under the age of 18. Definitely. I will not move my stance on that stance. That's just where I will die on that hill. But the reason that he ends up agreeing to that is, of course, Sneeko presses him on the whole, like, if a child wants to medically transition, do you allow them? And I don't even see how Charlie sits here and he doesn't clearly see the direct comparison that he's been debating this entire time. This entire time he's been saying, oh, people under the age of 18 should not be allowed to consent to a relationship with someone who's older than them, which yes, they shouldn't be. It's very simple. But when you're asked on the same subject of, well, should someone who's under the age of 18 be allowed to completely change their gender and get medical treatment to completely alter their life for the rest of eternity? Yeah, sure, go for it. As long as the parents consent and the children consent, yeah, go for it. You have just spent arguably the last hour and a half defending against the exact thing that you just said. You almost word for word, bar for bar, listened to Sneako sit there and say, if the parents of the 16-year-old girl and the parents of the 25-year-old man agree that the two can get married and everyone can hold hands and sing Kumbaya, then I'm not gonna stop it. So you're just 100% saying the same exact argument in a different circumstance, which completely invalidates everything that you've just debated against. You've come out of here with a massive L just strictly due to the fact that you weren't able to say that you don't believe that children should not medically transition because they're not mature. They don't know the decisions that they're making. And it's up to a parent to say, no, you cannot make these decisions. You are too young and we are going to stop you from making these decisions. So regardless of how you feel about the situation, like I just said, Moist Critical just 100% negated his entire debate preference that he was having. His whole stance is just shattered because you spent almost 2 hours sitting here defending the rights of people who are under the age of 18 to be in a relationship with someone who's older than them. At the same time, you go, oh, someone under the age of 18 should be allowed to make a life-altering decision to themselves. You've got yourself in a catch-22 here and you've caught nothing and you're just sitting there with your pants down looking like a fool. So way to go, Moist. You really kind of fumbled that bag. I mean, you can just tell by the way that Sneako's licking his lips over here, looking at Moist like he's a moist piece of cake and he's ready to devour that bad boy like it's his wedding day to a 16-year-old, that he is about to end this man's entire career. You know, if he's looking like this, you messed up somewhere along the way. Because if the guy who is campaigning for people to marry minors is looking at you like this, knowing that you messed up, boy howdy did you just royally mess up. Because of course he's just going to take this and run with it the entire rest of the way, because for how much of a moron that he is, how bad of brain dead takes he has, he finally has a victory on you in this short little instance, because you have somehow managed to outdumb the moron, and you can just never let this happen. I'm all for people talking about their differences in political debates or whatever you want to. People can be wrong. People like Sneako can definitely be wrong in their takes and have terrible ones, but so can people like Charlie also, because children should not be allowed to make life-altering decisions at such a young age. You know what else is a life-altering decision at a young age? Getting in a relationship with someone who is way too old to be in a relationship with you. They're both very, very harmful to the development of a child, and the fact that Charlie just walked into that one, it's beyond me. And just to clarify, at the end of the stream, he does a little bit of crashing out because he realizes that the optics on what he just said are terrible, because it is.
You can get therapy, you can go through the process of making that decision. I thought that's what it was. I thought he was just speaking in hyperbole with the dick cutting off shit. I thought that's what we were talking about. And then if you decide that's the path you want to take, it is your body, you can do that. You can make that decision once you become of age to make a decision like that. I just don't understand how it got so muddled. Half of the fucking conversation was hyperbole, and apparently that one was literal. Or it's a very malicious attack on what I'm trying to say, or a misunderstanding. I don't know. But I think I'm just going to call it there. Alright, take it easy, have a good night, see ya.
To say that kids should be allowed to medically transition, and his defense was that he thought that they were talking in hyperbole, which I don't understand how talking in hyperbole is going to change the way that you think about that. He says that basically he thought that they were talking about if you want to choose at like the age of 16 to start going through therapy and going through the processes of doing that, then you should be allowed to, which in the debate it sounds like he just full on goes, if you wake up and you're 12 years old and you decide, I don't want to be a girl anymore, then you can go through the process and immediately, a year later, be identifying as a boy, get all the surgeries to be a boy, hormone blockers, stuff that you will never be able to come back from. That's the way that he made it sound. So I'm always willing to give anyone the benefit of the doubt to fully explain their position on whatever it is that they are talking about, unless it's someone like Sneeko, who is campaigning for children to be put in terrible situations. There's no debating that. That should just not happen. But who knows, maybe it was a slip of a tongue. Like I said, I don't know if that's his actual beliefs. At the end of his stream, he does try to sit there and say, thought it was hyperbole. I didn't think we were talking about like immediate having it happen and whatnot, but it's just, I don't know, man. It's just really hard to try to come back from something when you are arguing against something for a solid 2 hours, and then immediately flip the script and go, oh, well, I think children should be able to make life-altering decisions as a child. But who knows? I just want to talk about this because a lot of people watch Moist Critical. A lot of people probably saw this debate. A lot of people are probably talking about it. I just wanted to put my input on it. Thought it'd be interesting to talk about. If my voice sounded weird in this, I think I'm a little sick. I can't really talk too loud, but I don't know. What's your opinion on it? Do you think Moist took a massive L? Because I think you did, but I don't know. I just want to talk about it. Hopefully y'all enjoy it, and I'll see y'all in the next one.